start by, sorry, we've already kind of gotten into it.
I know we're in it.
Before we get too much further, can you introduce yourself and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Suzi Analogue, producer, songwriter, creator of Never Normal Records, also a composer, sound designer, and I am based in Miami, Florida, currently.
Nice. And you also started Never Normal, right? Could you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Never Normal is our label, Never Normal Records, and our collective Never Normal sound system. And we're dedicated to uplifting Black electronic artists and the Black electronic arts, whether it be audio or visual. We really care about the use of technology for creativity within our communities. And so our collective is full of multidisciplinary artists who utilize technology to self-determine what they feel Black futurism is and Afrofuturism is. And it knows no creative bounds as far as what we produce. So that's why it's Never Normal.
Hard snaps. No, I love that you brought up some of our key words for this discussion and project. You know, we were lucky enough to be able to put on this series of programming called Dreaming Black Futures. And it was all about the ways that Afrofuturism can actually impact us in our mundane reality and in our waking lives, and ways that we can explore Afrofuturism or Black futurism outside of just an aesthetic or a sonic experience, right? And so I would love to hear how you define Afrofuturism or how you see yourself in the realm of the Afrofuturist canon.
How I see myself as an Afrofuturist is just in the way that I operate, the way I produce my work. It is very technologically based. The way I connect essentially to my community, which is very Afro-diasporically based. I always am centering the African and the Afro-diasporic experience within everything that I create or approach. And so my mentality in just approaching life is Afro and African, you know. So that's just to start, like that's the basis. I don't look through life with any other lens other than the African experience and the Black experience in general. And aside from that, I've used technology my whole life since I've been able to access social media networks at a very young age, teenage age, to connect with other amazing minds who share the Black experience. And have a love for the Black arts, whether that be hip hop or original music like techno and house music, and culture like theater, dance like Alvin Ailey. I just always used like the internet to find people or connect with people who also shared those kinds of joys, and then by proxy, I produce music that is very electronically produced with synthesizers and all types of gadgets, things that aren't synthesizers, things that I don't even know what to call. Some of the tools I have, I don't even know what to call this, but it is electronic instruments. And I make my music with all electronic instruments and computers. I rarely use acoustic instruments. The way that I see culture coming together, I've always had a future forward perspective on where culture could be. I feel like now things are kind of just catching up to how I felt like 10 years ago. So I'm really interested to see like not how the world will change, but how my view will change. Like, will I become more comfortable now? Do I become more comfortable, or am I still thinking ahead? Knowing that I think the sound of music has like gotten like more futuristic. People's approaches have gotten more futuristic, but like, will I now be chilling? Like, or will I just, I don't think I will. Like, but it's been something I've been positing lately, just like wondering about now that I don't feel like I have to fight to show everyone what the future could be like so much. And I see the convergence happening more and more with just how technology is going with social media networks and just flights and travel and the way people are moving around now more than ever. What kind of view do I have now? Am I just living within the futurism that I always believed? And can I just thrive now? That's what I would like to believe. But I think as a futurist, I had to really fight for that and really establish a lot and really put myself out into the world a lot to even show people that it was possible. And so, yeah, I do feel like for my age range, I do feel like what I did as a young adult was take knowledge that I have from the past and cultures like right before me, ahead of me, from hip hop and like mentors from that era. And then I like met people my age and then even kids. And then I said, wait, we have to make a bridge. And I was very intentional about creating a bridge with my artworks. And so I think that was even futuristic because I don't think that you could really have a complete future without acknowledgement and presence of the past. So it was really important for me to even connect some of like the music and cultural elders in my story, my own story, connecting with people and working on documentaries in the past and working on just like cultural works within my time in different Black cities like Philadelphia that has like so much Black history. And now being in Miami, I thought it would be important for me to be here because there is such Black culture here, but it's a newer city in the context of American cities on the East Coast. And I did feel like my perspective as an Afrofuturist would be really needed here more than like some other cities where it's like they got y'all good, y'all know what happened, y'all know what's up, y'all know where we're going. Let me go where they might need a little help. And so I came here for many reasons, but I did feel like I had that Afrofuturistic sense to know that like we have to keep spreading the energy into places where maybe it's harder to transmute it because of like social conditions or because of just like what the culture, the visceral culture is not like always, it's not apparent that like, oh, this is Black. Especially in cities like this where it's like a lot of Creole culture. Coming from my background, I am Afro-Indigenous, so I have family who are Indigenous to North Carolina, as well as having African roots. And that's kind of on both sides of my family, but very heavy presence of the Indigenous culture on my mother's side. So it's just been really important to me to come to the South because that's where my mother's side is from, and to kind of like think of new stories for like Southern Afrofuturists. I consider myself one, and I spent a lot of time of my formative years in my artistry and my craft in the Northeast. But like now, this is like what 2022, and they're just having like the first Afrofuturist like Carnegie Hall like festival thing. It's 2022. Like, so I'm like, y'all got it. Y'all are good. Well, what are we doing down here? What are we doing in Miami? What are we doing in the South? What are we doing in Atlanta? Like, what are we doing in the places where they don't have a Carnegie Hall, they don't have those resources. It's been important for me to physically be here. So I just think that my perspective as an Afrofuturist has taken on so many walks of life on its own. I just follow it. I'm just kind of humble. It's kind of like like I'm in servitude of my perspective in a sense, because I know how it can enlighten and open people up and really just remind people of what's always been there, but what we haven't always had access to through public schooling, even private schooling, and just using sheer creativity to do that versus like hard information, like education modules. And I believe in education very much so, but what we're educated on has not always been in the best respect to anything futuristic about Black people. Like what we learn in schools in this country never gives you a glimpse of how great it could be in the future for Black people. We just learn about the hard, dark histories and some of the struggles, and then we never envision or imagine. So me as a creative, I feel like that's my place to go and imagine with people in many different places, but also places where maybe it's not that easy to. Sometimes I can see it more when I'm like, I can see the void. When I can see the void, I could actually see beyond the void. Like, okay, this is what we need to do. Like, this is what we need to do. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but I am like really this person, like this mindset. Like I don't separate it, and I don't. Once I learned of the term Afrofuturism, I was like, oh, like how I've been thinking the whole time, how this could be. Even as a kid, I will say that I have recordings of myself. I made Never Normal Records because I believe in us having catalogs of and archives of Black sound, not just like music. We'll eventually branch off into the more talks and things of that nature, recordings of that nature. And when I was a kid, I used to have audio diaries. So I would just record myself talking about anything. And I remember I had one where I was talking about how they were sampling, how like Diddy was sampling, Bad Boy was sampling records from the 70s, because I noticed like they're the same records my mom would play, but then like I'm hearing Notorious B.I.G. rap over them. And that to me was like a glimpse of what futurism could be as a kid. It's like, you know what, you can take the past and put it into the future. And hip hop does that. Hip hop is just like this amazing tool we have to just like be so metaphysical about how we think about time, space, and relation. But I remember being very adamant on that cassette, one of the diaries. I'm like, we're going back, y'all. They're taking the past and they're connecting it with the future. And I was just like so amazed. I'm like, yeah, and they keep doing it, and it's amazing. And from there, I've always had a fascination of like bending time and space through sound and records and recordings, and knowing that I had the power to do it in my own way. It has always led and motivated my actions.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you answered, and you answered from a lot of different angles, so we got to get a complete picture of what connects you to this concept. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you touched on that I kind of want to hop into. I mean, on one hand, towards the beginning, you kind of talked about how that this is a part of who you are because you are, you're a Black person who is thinking about the future, but you mentioned something specifically about not just thinking about things from like diasporic perspective of being from the United States, but also like thinking of things from an African perspective as well. And I think that's something that I really admired about you and your work, is that when you're talking about Afrofuturism and you say, I'm thinking about the African perspective as well, you're not just saying it. Like, you've also spent time on the continent, and that has influenced the way that you're making work as well. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak a little bit to that and what your experience has been in Africa.
Yeah, totally. I first traveled to East Africa, to Kampala, Uganda in 2015. And it was for a program called Next Level, where we shared diplomacy concepts through, and it wasn't even concepts, it's literally like entrepreneurship or whatever, peacefulness. I don't even think we really shared peacefulness per se. We were just peaceful. And, we did that through the vein of hip hop being like the mobilization for it. And I was a beat making instructor and audio production instructor. And I worked with a group of semi-youth, because they were younger, but they were all like within their teens and early 20s. And we worked on beat making, and I showed them Ableton, and we worked on a community performance. And we also worked with a traditional Ugandan band that showed us the East African instrumental traditions that even stem from the Congo. And we got like firsthand oratories, like stories about like how music was invented, like the concept of music was invented like in Africa, and like how certain people play certain things in different spaces, or what different sounds were known for. And so it really opened my eyes, it really opened my mind. I already founded Never Normal just a year before that. So when I came back, I was like, there's a lot here. There's a lot here. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to cover, and we can do it because we have the internet. So let's get it going. And that informed my newer project Zones, my series of audio visual works, because I wanted to make a project where if I went back to, like, for the first time to Uganda, they were like, well, who are you? What do you do? Like, it's this. I wanted them to know where I was coming from, and what inspired it, from like almost like a documentary type perspective. So so being on the continent just really opened my mind up to really, for me, what was at stake, like this connection, the connection with the youth of Africa, whereas in Uganda, 70% of youth is under the age of 25. I mean, 75% of their population is under the age of 25, not youth, their whole population. So I'm like, okay, well, that means Africa is the future. It's the now and it's the future. So there's no reason why I shouldn't be connecting with the continent on a weekly or daily basis, which now in my life, I do connect with the continent on a daily basis. But it just opened my eyes and opened the doorway. I kept in contact with my students. I returned back in 2019 because a student of mine I helped them to start a festival called Africans Street Art Festival. And they did about 2 or 3 years before the pandemic shut down. But I performed at their last one. Huge festival with just aerosol arts everywhere, on buildings, on little houses that were around, big skate park activity, b-boy breaking competition, b-girl competition, just all in the spirit of hip hop. And then I also played Nege Nege Festival, and I did a residency there for a month when I went back. So in that time, I also met a lot of other African artists from across the continent, from the Congo, from Tanzania, from Uganda, from Kenya, and we were all just putting in our time to make a great festival happen in that September. And I remember playing for the first time, like playing like a zone set, which is full circle because I started zones when I came back from Africa. And then I was playing zones when I went back. And the Nile River was behind me, and the sound was reverbing off the Nile River. And I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is why we do this. Like, this is why. And so I've had, I guess I would say, a very favorable experience going and being a part of community in these pockets of the creative, the creative pockets of the African cities. I have been able to haven't been able to visit many other cities since the pandemic, but I am due to go back this year to do another workshop, beat making workshop in Ghana. And I did have plans for traveling to a few other countries in the continent. And I really, since then, I've met so many other artists that I just want to go to every state. I want to go to Kenya, and I want to go to Tanzania. And so right now, our Never Normal Sound System Collective has been working on a project called Gakuba, which in Luganda translates to it slaps, it beats, it knocks. And all our beats on the project that were made by artists on the continent in collaboration with the Afro-diasporic artists of Never Normal Sound System. We've been working on this since 2020. I got that little message today that we're taking too long to put it out. we all really want it out. So it's coming. It's coming it's coming. It's almost ready to go. I just want to make sure it's right because it feels like a piece of life work to me. The fact that I was able to even produce this with other people that I've been able to meet through the journey of music. And we are just connecting the rhythms and the cultures and the legacies of our sound from the diaspora to the continent. What really amazes me about the Afro-diasporic sound is funny because I remember I was playing the festival one night. I played 2 nights, Nege Nege. And I was playing one night and I'm like, I hope they get these rhythms. I hope, because when you are when you're at an African festival, it's a lot of traditional rhythms that are played there. And people really understand those rhythms. They really understand what they're saying, they're doing, they know what to do with their body. And then I come in, I'm playing club music, which is Afrofuturistic. This was the time in playing this. I'm playing Jersey Club, Philly Club. I was actually playing B-More Club first. Hold on, I was born in Baltimore. I was playing B-More. I was playing all the regional club music from the East Coast. And seeing them try to get the rhythm, because to me, I said, this is what survived. These are the rudiments that survived everything, that made it into our beat machines. We took these beat machines and we made our own rudiments. We made our own rhythms. And we said, this is Black. We're from this city and this is the Black. This is dun, 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 dun. That's our beat. It might not be based on a traditional Kadodi beat, that East African beat that would be in some traditional wedding music or something, but it still is our tradition of celebrating through these specific coded rhythms. And I said, dang, this is real futuristic. I started saying, I'm like, they don't even get it. I'm like, it's not that they didn't get it, but they didn't get it how you would get it if you lived in Jersey, because this is what survived. This is what survived. So once I had that awakening, I said, it's very important for us to do a project where we join our rhythms, because I don't want that to continue. I don't ever want to go. Every time I go back to the continent, it's way more ahead than the last time I was there, and it's moving so fast. The first time I went, I don't know how you would, I got around on a boda, which is a little motorcycles. But the last time I went, I was taking Uber. So it's moving quite fast. It's moving quite fast out there. And that was only a 4-year difference. Moving very fast. And the last time I sensed a little hesitation around the rhythms, and I said, that can't be. We're all one. That can't be. So I hope this project unites the sound even more. And everything that I do is with that. Like I said, I see the void. When I see the void of something, I could see through to the other side of it. I didn't know that that meant make a compilation with my label or with our collective at that time, but I know there's a solution. And when there's an opportunity to get to the future side of things, I'm going to try to take a chance to do it. And so that's what Gakuba really means to me right now. And that's like some of the work that we've been doing. And I definitely worked on that project today. I've been working on it every day. So it's every day I'm just with and interacting with the continent now, and it feels great. We're making one world, and hopefully we can make a big Black world. Just like we have our own resources and our own archives, our own libraries, our own spaces, our own everything. We deserve that, and even if it's a hybrid style of existing, I think there's no way around that. I think that's some of the stratifications of, oh, you're African, I'm African American, or you're Caribbean. Like real Pan-Africanism, I'm totally for. I do definitely want to acknowledge people's traditional differences and backgrounds, but I do believe in a Pan-Africanism that will get us through into the future. That's what's really going to take us deep into the future.
I just have to say, you are so inspiring. The work that you're doing, the grounds you're making, the references that you're able to pull, the curriculum that you're cultivating, and like finding language to rhythm and being a translator, right? Like you have mentioned this whole notion or kind of desire to build bridges between the diasporas, right? To create more of a collective. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing. And it's something that Kadala and I have discussed based off our own backgrounds and just traveling and living in different places and coming into contact with different Blacknesses, right? Because we're not a monolith. And so, yeah, I feel like you gave me so much food for thought. But one of the things that keeps coming up is also this notion of Afrofuturism, right? And if the word is really doing the movement justice, because as you said, this is a diasporic project. And you have people from, you have Black American people in the US, you have Afro-Latinx people across the globe, you have people from the continent. And sometimes there can be a bit of a tension thinking, when people default to Afrofuturism, they think of Black Panther, it's very Wakanda forever, it's fake African accents, it's like a lot of co-opting of the culture in order to mobilize maybe like Black American dreams. So would love to hear like what you think about Afrofuturism as a term, if it's something that is serving you, if it's something that needs to be redefined, and like perhaps what other words or language might we use in order to kind of speak to this world you're talking about, right? Like a Pan-African futurist movement.
Yeah, I think I explained it to Kadala really well in a previous conversation we had, where I said Afrofuturism is like a vehicle. It's like a vehicle, like we can put all these ideas into, like, you could fit it into the trunk, you could stuff it into the car. It's how you dress, it's how you wear your hair, it's how the photo looks, right? On the aesthetic side of things, there is very much so an aesthetic drive for Afrofuturism to look and feel a certain way. I don't subscribe to that because there's times where I need to reference. I'm actually a big reference person. I think that's the real way we're going to get into the future, to remind people that this is what's come before and this is how we can bring it in new, different ways. And you're going to feel when it's new and it's different. What we feel is the futurism part of it. Like that's the feeling. But as a term, Afrofuturism is just a vehicle for people to be able to get to a place to understand like what that feels like. It's not, other than that, it's kind of an aesthetic. Like it's spoken of and it's related to, and and applied as a sort of an aesthetic. I think it's applied as a certain aesthetic. But what Afrofuturism means to me is the right to self-determine, to fully self-determine my Blackness, and for all those around me to be able to self-determine their Blackness into a thriving lifestyle, a thriving living experience. And it means that we have Black-owned spaces. It means we have well-known Black everything that we have everything else for. Chefs, restaurants, teachers, professors, scientists, banks, like everything. Like, so we have to think futuristically only because of the history that's preceded it. We wouldn't have to think futuristically if they didn't bomb Tulsa. We wouldn't have to think futuristically if, you know, we didn't have slavery for 400 years. We wouldn't have to think futuristically. We would have just been. So now it's a vehicle to think ahead to where we need to be, where we've had like 500-year lapse. We have to get into this Afrofuturism to just get to where we actually need to be. You know, self-determining, free, thriving, self-determining. It's really simple to me at the end of the day what the futurism leads to. It doesn't lead to flying cars, and like, it leads to us being okay as global Black population, where it's not a headline every day that a group of us are suffering. And that's still the truth today. We're looking at the Ukraine. We don't like anything that's going on there. But then what's the next headline after that? Oh, the Africans are suffering there because they can't escape and go back home. They're facing racism in the Ukraine. Why can't they self-determine? You know, like what is wrong? What's going on with the system that the self-determination isn't there? And for them to be there, I mean, a lot of people are there studying, working, just making a new lives for themselves. They're already thinking Afrofuturistically about even being there, because it's not where they're from. So again, Afrofuturism is a vehicle to get us to like where we already should be and could be, had oppression not like taken a chokehold over everything Black that ever was. From our labor, from our physical bodies, from our contributions to society, from everything that has been taken away from us. We think to Afrofuturism like something that can get us beyond that. And I believe in it, but also it's evidence that the oppression has been and continues to be real. And so we can't, sometimes I think creatively, I've seen Afrofuturism referred to in a way where it is kind of like treated in as a vehicle for thinking in absence of everything bad that has happened to Black people. I don't know how safe that is to think that way. I don't know if we should just be like, yes, and now we all have wings and can fly away. Because we need to deal with what is on the ground now and what has come before us to make it harder. We need to actually think Afrofuturistically to make sure that never happens again. That's a part of the tool of Afrofuturism, to improve the future for, I don't have kids. Maybe I'll have kids. It needs to be better for them. Like, it just in general, it needs to be better for them. And I don't want them to face the same things. So I have to think futuristically even for that. That's a part of Blackness that just like thinking Afrofuturistically is a part of Blackness. It's just a part of us existing. I don't even have to think twice. I just know, oh, I don't want my kids to go through. I don't want them to be called that. I don't want them to, we're always thinking futuristically anyway, just to have a semblance of hope in our lives that things could improve and get better, and that we can contribute something in life to make things better. So Afrofuturism could be understood as an aesthetic and Wakanda forever and all that. But it's really about the legacy. It's really about the legacies we're creating into the future, and what will be on the side of history that will improve things for Black people all around the world, to be honest.
Wow. Wow. That was a beautiful answer. Yeah. I mean, something that part of what really attracts me to your work, and something that I feel like when I think about this concept, my mind immediately goes to you. I feel like you really embodied this idea of like Sankofa in terms of like moving forward while looking back in order to like learn from our past so that we're moving in the right direction as we're moving forward, right? And even in the way that you were talking earlier about how you first encountered like sampling and were like, whoa, this is so cool how they're pulling from these things that have come from the past and remixing them in order to create something even crazier, right? So I guess something that I'm interested in is if there are any particular like Afrofuturists that you like really look to that inspire your work today.
I mean, I do feel like a lot of the great writers, especially the Black femme writers, have always like put me on to the fact that like, especially like that Sankofa perspective, even people like, of course, Octavia Butler, but like fiction folks like even Alice Walker or Toni Morrison or, you know, like Zora Hurston, like those people like put me on to knowing that they were future. I was reading their stuff and I was a kid and they wrote that stuff 50 years before I even picked the book up, and I'm just reading this like, this is relevant. And so it just opened my mind, you know, it opened my mind to know if futurism is real, especially, of course, Octavia Butler. But all of the writers, even, you know, Bell Hooks, like she didn't write fiction, but she wrote about a world that was so possible if we thought more futuristically, if we thought of each other in relation to like how the systems worked. And it's like, no one ever tells you to think like that. No one ever says, hey, look at how your church was, look at how your school was, and why do you think that you regard other people like this? And you're like, wait, that's futuristic. So a lot of Black femme thinkers really inspire me, just to know that I can have my own perspective and to know that I don't have to doubt myself when I do come up with these thoughts that I do have. And then like on from that, I mean, everybody like artist wise, like, especially music artists, people like Prince, who really just like challenge every like thing about gender normativity. It just did it just naturally, like, yeah, it's me, I'm hot, like this. that really opened my mind. I always love Prince. So Prince is an Afrofuturist to me for sure. A lot of the artists from like the 80s, like the 70s and 80s were Afrofuturists. Parliament, Funkadelic, they had spaceships on the stage. So creatively, I feel like I've had a lot of entry points into Afrofuturism that came like years before I was even born, and people have been thinking about the future and the past and the concept of Sankofa like for as long as we've been here. So between that, Sankofa, and like the Congo Cosmogram, like everything has been about the past and the future. Techno music, the Belleville 3, just, you know, all of the techno pioneers, the ghetto tech music in Chicago, it was all evidence to me that Afrofuturism was real and it was being applied in Black cities on a regular basis, whether it be pockets and really, unfortunately, all of these things that I'm mentioning were only understood understood through the means of their commercial viability. So I don't think any of the things that I'm mentioning ever are noted for being so important as they actually are. Of course, Sun Ra and the orchestra, and I've met some of the orchestra members before and talked with them, and they're telling me just tales of when they lived on communes and stuff. And I remember I was very young experience. I remember I met one of the orchestra members. I was probably like 19 or 20, and they're like, I want to talk with you. You seem interesting. And they were just so like from another planet. And I'm like, okay. And then we would talk, and they just tell me all this interesting stuff about their life, like their life, how they were free, how they were going to live in different countries and doing different things. And I'm like, wow, that's possible. And when I had the opportunity to do it, I was open to it, to do it through music. So I feel like all my life, I've always been looking to connect with people who think futuristically. And I've also had guides through cultural works, literary works, performances, theater, to knowing what Afrofuturism is and what it can feel like. Playwrights like Ntozake Shange, just like everybody has just let me know that this is real. It's real. You can make your own future. And that's why I've come to this point where I believe that the real goal is to encourage self-determination. It's yes, universal standards of healthcare and lifestyle, life quality, but self-determination just in the center of that. That's the goal for us as people, as Black people globally, to not feel like we have to rely on any institution, because Blackness has become so institutionalized from all the colonialism and all of the imperialism, and we have to figure out how to self-rely and become more independent.
Absolutely. I feel the key words that keep coming up, right, are self-determination and community, and finding ways to have it be kind of a global conversation. And I know, maybe to piggyback off of the whole Sankofa of looking back to go forward, in this conversation today, you have mentioned the importance of activating spaces that haven't traditionally been activated in an Afrofuturist way, like Miami, for instance, and being able to kind of co-create and collaborate with other folks from the diaspora to have these conversations. And so, in the essence of self-determination, how can cities that might not be major cities like LA, New York, that might not have the cultural institutions that typically kind of, parade, or not parade, but encourage these type of discourses, like how might people from, Atlanta or people from other smaller cities activate their own lives using an Afrofuturist kind of framework or value system?
Yeah, I believe that the power of creativity is really a great tool here in this kind of instance, when you want to unify people who may connect under the concept of Afrofuturism. So by having gatherings that are centered around just ideating or creating something together, even a if it's a music related type event, beat making or beat sharing beats, types of community events where people could just come and share their work, it's gonna kick off some energy. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to production and beat making, people make things with electronics, with all these perspectives, and it's only a matter of time before a few people realize they're, kind of on the same wave, or they share some values. Also, things like book clubs are super, super, super helpful. We actually did have a book club here in Miami soon after I got here, and I started working with an organization here, and we had a book club, we had a bailout fund, we had a lot of things, you know, that just helps community. And so the book club was very helpful because then you really get into texts that are written by collectives and, you know, radical thinkers and people who, it doesn't have to be your book club can be any concept you want. And so if it's Afrofuturistic book club, you read Afrofuturistic texts. You invite people, whoever wants to come can come. Hopefully they're Black. If they're not, I guess they'll learn something. And you invite people and you just see who comes, whether it's 5 people or 50 people. You invite people to read and to go over and create worksheets and create highlights and create templates for sharing the thought. And the bottom line of what I'm saying, whether it's from beat making or book clubs, you have to have an activity that invites a shared thinking process with your community in a specific regards to Black futurism. And whether sometimes in certain cities it's nightlife, it's more subversive, it's like raves, and that's fine too. Or it could be dancing, but if the dancing is based on Black electronic music, then you're introducing and inviting shared thought in that realm as well. So whether it be talks, raves, book clubs, beat making meetups, anything you can do, if you present it with under a lens of like Afro-futuristic perspective, you can start to cultivate something and stay dedicated to it, even if it's a monthly, even if it's a quarterly kind of event where people can come and gather and learn. Film screenings, always great. Film screenings, programming, TV shows, premieres, anything. Like people could link up and watch Lovecraft Country. Just it's already out, but if you sit and watch it together with other people and then have a little time built in to talk about it afterwards, you're gonna start to get some of that movement going and some of the conversations that might not happen in smaller cities, just through watching something together. So if you're one person and you have this passion for this, I would encourage you to just start small and start to gather whatever kind of content you will want to share to kick off the thought, and invite people to a public screening, public gathering, public listening session, anything that could kick off that kind of dialogue as to what the Afrofuturistic thinking could be for that town and that city.
Yeah. That kind of leads into another question that we had, right, around like what you see futurism looking like at a local level, right? And I think that kind of started to get onto that point, but I'd love to hear if you wanted to dig a little deeper on that specific question as well.
What futurism looks like on a local level, Afrofuturism looks like on a local level is okay, like let me think. I'm thinking of locale of Miami, so I'm just like, oh man, the things
that's a good launching point.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, people being able to stay in their homes and their communities and not being gentrified out of them. That's one thing. For people to be able to sustain. Sustainability is the center of what I think of the type of Afrofuturism that needs to happen on a local level. But for people to be able to afford and maintain their homes, their neighborhoods, and preserve their neighborhoods, to start businesses in them and keep businesses in them for years, I think that's an important part. Education-wise, for there to be like free-flowing opportunities for education for Black youth, and going from preschool into collegiate ages, if they deem so, to follow that, or for there to be other opportunities immediately available for Black youth, like technical training that could help them launch careers from the time that they matriculate out of high school. It's simple things to access to healthcare, for all Black people to have access to healthcare, and really, lessen police presence, in Black communities, where we can have more self-determination on how we want to govern our communities and police our own communities within community instead of from outside community. So those are some things that I would love to see. I'd love to see more Black mothers uplifted. I think that's a very important aspect to the Black experience. Supporting Black motherhood, I think is very, very, very important, and just as much as Black fatherhood as well. Supporting Black parenthood in general is like something that could be happening on a local level that could be so much more improved than what it is. Parents shouldn't have to struggle or split and divide their time just because they're struggling to afford these properties that are being hiked up and struggling to keep the schedules going, or the kids getting out of school and not having after school activity opportunities. Like, it's just too much going on that isn't enough of what needs to be going on. And I think there's an opportunity for us and for the government in place, if they're really about improving the communities, to make that better. But for them to make it better, for us to not even really need them to make it better. Like, make it better to the point where we're just like, we have our own businesses and we have our own things going on and we can fund our own communities. You go to Brooklyn, you see Hasidic Jewish communities that have their own ambulances. Like they have their own hospitals, ambulances, and I'm not comparing, but I'm just like, it's very possible to do it if we want to do it like that. If we don't, we opt into some other system, but we can very much so have like our own Black thriving communities. We've had them before, and only actually very recently, since the 80s, have we not had them. We've always had very strong Black communities with the Black doctors and lawyers and teachers, and we've always had it up until, not always, but we actually had it as a little sandwich. We had slavery, then we had thriving Black communities, then we didn't again. And like now we're just like, I think we want to get back to that a little bit, but we live in a global world, so we don't have to have that in just American cities. We can have that anywhere. And we could also work as Afro diasporic people. We could also work with people on the continent to like start to create our own things. Like, it's really all possible now. So it can go from local to global really fast now. What is working for one locale can really be mirrored and modeled into what can work in a country that doesn't even look like where it's modeled from. So I'm very excited about that possibility. And I just think the very simple things like community care, mutual aid, like all of those things can be enacted in our Black communities even more so. And that itself will be like its own futurism, because once we are able to self-persevere through natural disasters, through pandemics, and these things that are inevitable, then we will have arrived in the future.
The people don't deserve you. All the gems that have been handed out, all the roses, all the facts. I feel full, in the words of Whitney Houston.
Yes.
I feel
she is my spirit. She's my spirit guide. Honestly, she was the Afrofuturist that didn't get to do it. She got to do it a little bit, but the commercial oh, the commercial world got their hands on her. She knew where it was at. Whitney knew. For real.
Whitney, we're calling in Whitney as the Afrofuturist right now. We're bringing in that energy. And again, I just wanted to give out all the things on myself, on my ancestors, and all of them for you just sharing all your wisdom and also sharing practical ways that people can apply these concepts. Because like you said earlier, Afrofuturism usually gets default to the aesthetical practice, right? Or the sonic practice, which is great. It can be entertaining. It could also allow us to explore or imagine ourselves outside of, how we exist in the present. But when we think about things like mutual aid, when we think about things like self preservation and perseverance, right? It really takes us into the future by also looking at the past and seeing how people have survived, right? Like we are all someone's dream. Someone was like, okay, I'm gonna do this work because I know my future generations are going to be in a better situation than I'm in, right? And so I love the work that you're doing, enabling other people to think in that manner and also creating systems and opportunities and programming and conversation and like beat making to book clubs. I'm like, let's go. Sip and paints are over. We're over here. We're picking up literature. Okay, we're having study guides. We're making curriculum in the community. And yeah, like I just wanted to share my thanks and my gratitude because I think this video and everything that you've shared today is going to help so many people and continue to help them, through time. But yeah, I mean, Kadala, is there anything else you wanted to add in this? I feel like you literally answered everything and beyond. So it's a gift. Your presence is a present. And it's been so beautiful.
I don't talk about this stuff every day. So when I do, I go in. And I appreciate y'all for inviting me to talk about it because I got to get it out.
Anytime. I absolutely love hopping on a call with you. And it's always great to hear because every time we talk, we get to peel back another layer and you drop more gems of wisdom. And it's always great to, also have these conversations with multiple people because then we get to bounce off of each other in a way where something new is worth it from the conversation too. So I really appreciate that you took the time today and I look forward to the next time that we get to have another beautiful conversation like this one.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.